They called me the goddess of the Nile, the woman who could tame empires with a smile. But when Rome turned its gaze toward me, love became my ruin. I didn't lose Egypt in battle. I lost it in a heartbeat. So tell me, how do you fight an empire when your greatest weakness is the man you love? I stand at the edge of the palace balcony, watching the last light bleed from the Mediterranean sky. Alexandria burns golden beneath me, not with fire, but with the impossible brilliance of 1,000 oil lamps flickering to life across the harbor. The great library glows like a crown jewel. The lighthouse pierces the dusk, calling ships home to the safest port in the ancient world. My world. They call me Cleopatra, goddess, Pharaoh, the living Horus. But tonight, alone with the wind carrying salt and jasmine, I am simply a woman who has survived what should have killed her. I remember the knife at my throat when I was 17, my brother's blade, paid for with Roman silver. I remember being smuggled back into my own palace, rolled in a carpet like cargo, betting everything on Caesar's mercy. That night, I learned the first law of queens: survival is an art written in blood and whispered promises. Caesar gave me back my throne. More than that, he gave me a son. Caesar Ion sleeps now in the royal chambers, his small chest rising and falling with the certainty of inherited empires. He doesn't know yet that his father's blood still stains the Senate floor in Rome, that the republic his father tried to crown himself king of has devoured him whole. The news came 3 months ago. Assassination. Betrayal. The Ides of March, they're calling it, as if naming the wound makes it sacred. Rome is tearing itself apart now, and I can feel the tremors even here, across the wine-dark sea. Brutus. Cassius. The so-called liberators, scrambling for power like dogs over a carcass. And rising from the chaos, 2 wolves, Marcus Antonius in the east, young Octavian in the west. Caesar's general and Caesar's heir, circling each other, waiting to see who will blink first. I should be afraid. Egypt stands between them like a prize, wealthy and vulnerable, ripe for the taking. Without Caesar's protection, I am simply another foreign queen, another temptation for Rome's endless appetite. But I am not afraid. I have spent my entire life playing this game, the dance of empires, where one misstep means extinction. I speak 9 languages. I have read every book in the great library on war, philosophy, and the hearts of men. I have survived assassination, exile, and the contempt of those who believed a woman could never hold the crook and flail. They were wrong. The wind shifts, carrying voices from the harbor, merchants arguing prices, sailors singing in Greek and Aramaic, the eternal music of trade. This is what Rome doesn't understand. They see only legions and conquest, the fist of empire crushing everything beneath it. But Alexandria thrives because we are the crossroads, the place where east meets west, where knowledge flows like wine and power is more than swords. I built this. Not with armies, but with intelligence. With the careful cultivation of alliances. With the understanding that in a world of men who think only of today's battle, the queen who plans for tomorrow's peace will inherit the earth. But Caesar's death has changed the equation. I press my palms against the cool marble railing and close my eyes. I can see it already, the future branching before me like the Nile Delta, 1,000 possible channels, most leading to disaster. Octavian will come for me eventually. He is young, cold, methodical. He sees me not as a queen but as a reminder of his adopted father's weakness. A foreign sorceress who bewitched great Caesar, who bears a son with a better claim to Rome than his own. He will erase me if he can. Unless I move first. The thought crystallizes like ice in the desert. I open my eyes, and the city spreads below me, my city, my kingdom, my responsibility. Caesarian's inheritance. Egypt's last chance at independence in a world being devoured by Roman wolves. I cannot fight Rome with armies. I have galleys and gold, but Octavian and Antonius have legions beyond counting. No, I must fight the way I have always fought, with the one weapon that has never failed me. Myself. I turn from the balcony and walk back into the palace. My reflection catches in the polished bronze mirrors lining the corridor, dark eyes, the face that launched a throne. I am 30 years old. Still young. Still beautiful. Still dangerous. Mark Antony is in Tarsus, they tell me. Caesar's greatest general, consolidating power in the east. He has sent word, a summons wrapped in courtesy, the Queen of Egypt should come explain her loyalties. As if I were some provincial governor, required to justify my existence. He expects me to come crawling, desperate for Rome's approval. He expects fear, submission, the usual performance of client kingdoms begging for scraps. He has no idea who I am. I smile at my reflection. The game is beginning again, and this time, the stakes are everything. My kingdom. My son's future. The last free throne of the ancient world. I will go to Tarsus. But I will not crawl. I will arrive like the goddess they claim I am, Isis incarnate, sailing up the river in gold and purple, with silver oars and perfumed sails. I will make him remember that before Rome was born, Egypt was already eternal. And if I must seduce another Roman to save my kingdom, then so be it. Love is just another form of war. And I have never lost. I remember the moment I saw him, standing on the dock at Tarsus like a statue of Mars himself, all bronzed muscle and battle scars, watching my barge approach with an expression caught between disbelief and hunger. I had orchestrated every detail. The golden prow cutting through the Cydnus River. The purple sails billowing with wind and frankincense. My handmaidens dressed as sea nymphs, my servants as river gods. And me, draped in the gossamer silks of Aphrodite, reclining beneath a canopy of cloth of gold, as if the very heavens had descended to meet him. The crowds on the riverbank had abandoned the marketplace to watch. They whispered that the goddess of love had come to feast with Dionysus. Let them whisper. That was precisely the myth I wanted to plant. Marcus Antonius, Mark Antony to his legions, was nothing like Caesar. Where Caesar had been sharp, calculating, a mind that cut through complexity like a blade, Antony was fire and wine and laughter. A man who lived in his body, who trusted his instincts, who believed the world was meant to be conquered and then enjoyed. He was perfect. That first night, I invited him to dine aboard my barge. 12 courses, each more extravagant than the last. Acrobats and musicians, poets reciting in Greek and Latin, the finest wines from Chios and Cyprus flowing like the Nile in flood season. I spoke to him not of politics, but of philosophy. Of Homer and Herodotus. Of the campaigns of Alexander, whose empire we both claimed as inheritance. I watched him transform before my eyes, from wary general to enchanted man. He had expected a desperate supplicant. Instead, he found an equal who could match him wine cup for wine cup, story for story, who made him feel like more than just a blunt instrument of Roman will. By the third night, he was mine. I tell myself it was strategy. That every touch, every laugh, every whispered conversation beneath the stars was a calculated move in the great game. And perhaps it was, at first. But somewhere between Tarsus and the journey back to Alexandria, something shifted. He looked at me not as Caesar had, with appreciation for a useful ally, but as if I were the sun itself. And when he held me, I felt something I had sworn never to feel again. Hope. Here was a man who commanded half of Rome's legions. A warrior king in everything but name. Together, we could reshape the world. Egypt and Rome united not through conquest, but through love. Through partnership. Through the understanding that empires built on shared power could last forever. We ruled from Alexandria as if we were already divine. I showed him my kingdom, not as a foreign curiosity, but as his new home. We hunted along the Nile, feasted until dawn, founded our own drinking society, the inimitable livers, dedicated to pleasure beyond mortal measure. I gave him twins, Alexander Helios and Cleopatra Selene. Sun and moon. The next generation of our dynasty. And he gave me everything Caesar never could, his whole heart. But even then, even in those golden months when Alexandria had never been more glorious, I felt the shadow growing in the west. Octavian. Always Octavian. Caesar's bloodless heir, watching from Rome with those cold, calculating eyes. Every messenger from the capital brought new whispers: Antony has abandoned his duties. Antony has been bewitched. Antony has forgotten he is Roman. I tried to warn him. They're turning you into my weakness, I said one night, tracing the scars on his chest. They'll make our love into treason. He pulled me closer, laughing that deep, confident laugh. Let them talk. When have I ever cared what Rome thinks? I am Rome. My legions are Rome. And Rome will learn to love what I love. I wanted to believe him. Gods, how I wanted to believe him. But I had read enough history to know, Rome never forgives a man who chooses a foreign queen over the Republic's pride. And love, no matter how fierce, has never been armor enough against an empire's wounded ego. The propaganda reached us in fragments, like poison seeping through Alexandria's walls. They called me a whore. A sorceress. An Eastern temptress who had enslaved Rome's greatest general with drugs and dark magic. Octavian's scribes worked tirelessly, transforming our love into something obscene, our partnership into betrayal. And the worst part? Rome believed it. Every choice we made, they twisted. When Antony divorced Octavia, Octavian's own sister, that pale political bride forced upon him, they painted it as my corruption, not his liberation. When we celebrated the donations of Alexandria, crowning our children as rulers of the eastern territories, Rome called it theft. As if the lands Antony had conquered by his own sword somehow still belonged to a republic that had sent him east and then forgotten him. I stood beside him in the gymnasium that day, watching as he placed crowns upon our twins' heads. Alexander Helios, king of Armenia and Media. Cleopatra Selene, queen of Cyrenaica and Libya. And Caesar Ion, my brilliant, gentle son, proclaimed king of kings, Caesar's true heir. The crowd roared. Alexandria blazed with celebration. We were building something Rome had never imagined, an empire of partnership, where East and West merged into something greater than either alone. But I knew, even as the cheers echoed off marble walls, that we had just signed our death warrant. Octavian moved with surgical precision. First, he turned the Senate. I was declared an enemy of Rome, not Antony, never Antony, only me. As if removing me from the equation would cure him of his madness, restore him to Roman virtue. They didn't understand. We were already one flesh, one purpose. To declare war on me was to declare war on him, whether they admitted it or not. Antony's allies began to vanish. Some returned to Rome, whispering apologies about duty and republic. Others simply stopped answering messages. The great network of loyalty he had built over decades of campaigning unraveled like rope in salt water. I watched him age years in months. The confident warrior king who had swept into Alexandria now spent nights pacing the palace corridors, dictating letters that went unanswered, trying to hold together an alliance that was already dust. They're choosing Octavian over you, I said, though it killed me to speak the truth. Not because he's better, but because he offers them certainty. Order. A Rome without complications. Without you, you mean. His voice was bitter, tired. Without us. He turned to me then, and I saw the choice forming behind his eyes. The impossible mathematics of loyalty, Rome or Cleopatra. The legions or love. Everything he had been versus everything he had become. I waited for him to choose Rome. It would have been the rational decision. Send me away, sue for peace, return to Octavian's cold embrace and salvage what remained of his reputation. But Antony was never rational. If Rome cannot accept you, he said slowly, then Rome can burn. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like watching the sun set on the last day of the world. We prepared for war. Ships assembled in Alexandria's harbor, 500 warships and countless support vessels, the largest fleet Egypt had ever launched. Antony's remaining legions drilled in the desert heat. We had numbers, we had wealth, we had the strategic advantage of fighting close to our supply lines. What we didn't have was Rome's united will. Octavian had something more powerful than legions, a narrative. He had convinced Rome that this wasn't a civil war between ambitious men, it was a righteous crusade to save the Republic from foreign corruption. And in that story, I was the villain. Every day brought new desertions. Every week, another commander found urgent business elsewhere. The war hadn't even begun, and we were already losing it in the shadows, in the whispered conversations, in the slow hemorrhaging of belief. I stood on the palace balcony one evening, watching our magnificent fleet bob in the harbor. Antony came to stand beside me, his hand finding mine. "We can still win," he said, but his voice carried the hollow ring of hope forced into service against certainty. I squeezed his hand and said nothing. Because I had read enough history to know, wars are won before the first sword is drawn. And we had already lost ours in the hearts of men who valued order over love, certainty over passion, cold Roman steel over the dream of something better. All that remained was the dying. The morning of Actium, the sea was glass. I stood on the deck of my flagship, the Antonius, watching our fleet spread across the gulf like a forest of masts. 500 warships. Thousands of men. The accumulated power of Egypt and the eastern provinces, ready to decide the future of the world. Across the water, Octavian's fleet waited, smaller, leaner, commanded by Agrippa, his cold strategist. They had fewer ships, but every one of them moved with the precision of Roman discipline. Antony was aboard his command galley, arrayed in full military regalia. Before dawn, he had come to my cabin, and we had made love with the desperate intensity of people who know they might never touch again. He had kissed my forehead, whispered fortune favors the bold, and left to lead his men. But I saw the tremor in his hands. The weight in his eyes. He was commanding men who no longer fully believed in him. The battle began with a slow, grinding collision of wooden giants. Rams splintered hulls. Arrows darkened the sky. The sea turned red, then black with burning oil. The sound was apocalyptic, screaming men, crashing timber, the roar of Greek fire consuming everything it touched. From my position, I watched the chaos trying to find its shape. Our ships were larger, more powerful, but Agrippa's fleet moved like a single organism, exploiting every gap, every moment of hesitation. And there was so much hesitation. I could see it, Antony's center line wavering, ships pulling back instead of pressing forward. Captains looking over their shoulders instead of at the enemy. The rot of doubt made manifest in naval formation. Then I saw Antony's command galley surrounded, taking fire from 3 sides. The decision made itself. I ordered my squadron to turn, to break through the encirclement, to extract him before Agrippa could close the trap. My Egyptian ships cut through the battle line like a knife. Roman vessels scattered, some because we forced them to, others because they simply let us pass. As if they had been told to create an opening. Later, they would call it cowardice. Desertion. The Egyptian queen fleeing the moment the battle turned difficult. But in that moment, all I knew was that Antony was dying, and I had the power to save him. We broke through. My ships reached open water, sails unfurling to catch the wind. Behind us, the battle continued to rage, but its outcome was already written. Without unified command, without belief in victory, our magnificent fleet was just kindling waiting for Agrippa's match. And then I saw Antony's galley turn. He was following me. No, he was abandoning the battle to follow me. I watched, paralyzed with horror, as his command ship disengaged from the fight, leaving his fleet leaderless. His remaining loyal captains stared in disbelief as their commander sailed away, chasing after the Egyptian queen who had stolen his courage. That's what they would say. That's what history would record. That Antony saw Cleopatra fleeing and lost all reason, abandoning his men, his honor, his last chance at victory, all for a woman. But I knew the truth that would never be written. He was already beaten before the first ram struck. The battle was lost the moment his own men stopped believing he could win it. My retreat didn't cause his defeat, it merely made visible what was already inevitable. Still, the optics were devastating. When his ship finally caught up to mine hours later, he wouldn't look at me. He sat in the stern, head in hands, while the Egyptian coast drew closer. The man who had once conquered half the world, reduced to a figure of tragedy. I tried to approach him. We had to, don't. His voice was hollow, scraped clean. Don't make it tactical. Don't make it reasonable. It was both of those things. I left them. He finally looked up, and his eyes were dead things. I left my men to die so I could follow you. Do you understand what that means? What I've become? I understood perfectly. I had turned the greatest general of his generation into a lovesick fool. That's what Rome would say. That's what his own men would believe. The truth, that love and war are both choices, and he had finally chosen which empire mattered more, would be buried beneath the simpler story of bewitchment and weakness. We sailed back to Alexandria in silence, chased by the certain knowledge that we had just lost everything. Not in the battle itself, but in the story that would be told about it. And stories, I had learned too late, are the only wars that truly matter. The end came slowly, then all at once. Octavian's legions marched across Egypt like a shadow consuming the sun. City after city opened their gates without resistance. Why fight for a queen who had fled Actium? Why die for a cause already lost? Antony tried to rally forces, but his heart wasn't in it. I watched him drill troops who avoided his eyes, who held their swords like props in a play whose ending everyone already knew. The great lion had become a ghost haunting his own legend. He spent his days in a small house by the harbor, the Timonium, he called it, after Timon the misanthrope. Alone with his shame, drinking away the memory of what he'd been. I sent messengers. He refused them all. So I did what I had always done, I adapted. I sent word to Octavian. Perhaps we could negotiate. Perhaps I could preserve something, my children's lives, Egypt's nominal independence, some shred of the future I'd built. Octavian's reply was surgical, he would accept my surrender. Personally. In Alexandria. I knew what that meant. Triumph. A foreign queen paraded through Roman streets in chains, a spectacle to cement his legend. The dangerous Cleopatra, reduced to entertainment. I began building my mausoleum. The news I had died reached Antony in his exile by the sea. I don't know who told him, perhaps I'll never know if it was accident or cruel mercy. But he believed it. They brought him to me dying. He had fallen on his own sword, and the blade had done its work poorly. He was still conscious when they carried him to the mausoleum, still bleeding, still trying to speak through the pain. I held him as they hoisted him through the upper window. We couldn't open the doors, Octavian's men were already outside, and pulled him into my arms one final time. I'm here, I whispered, cradling his head. I'm alive. I'm here. He smiled, actually smiled, through blood-flecked lips. Always dramatic, even our deaths. Don't. Save your strength. For what? His hand found my face, trembling. I failed you. Failed Rome. Failed everything. You loved me. That was never failure. Wasn't it? His eyes were already glazing. We could have, if I'd been stronger, if I'd chosen, you chose. We both chose. And I would choose this again, even knowing how it ends. I don't know if he heard me. His last breath escaped like a sigh, and then he was gone, the last man who had loved me more than he loved empire. I cleaned the blood from his face and closed his eyes. 3 days later, Octavian came. He was younger than I expected. Handsome in a cold, architectural way. He looked at me not with hatred, but with the clinical interest of a man cataloging something already dead. You'll be treated well, he said. Honored, even. Rome bears you no ill will. Liar. But a polished one. And my children? Your children with Antony will be raised in Rome. Properly. As Romans. Erased, he meant. Stripped of their Egyptian heritage, their mother's legacy, everything that made them ours. And Caesar Ion? His pause told me everything. Caesar's son could never be allowed to live. Not while Octavian wore his adoptive father's name. I see, I said. Thank you for your honesty. He almost smiled. You're remarkable, you know. Under different circumstances. Under different circumstances, you'd still have conquered Egypt. I was always going to be your enemy. The only question was how long I could forestall the inevitable. Then you understand. I understand perfectly. He left me under guard, loose guard, almost courteous, believing I was broken, accepting. He understood tactics, strategy, the mathematics of power. But he never understood me. That night, I bathed in milk and honey. Dressed in my finest royal regalia. Placed the uraeus crown of Egypt on my brow one last time. The asp was small, sleepy from the warmth of the fig basket. It barely hurt. I lay down on my golden couch and felt the venom work its ancient magic. My vision blurred. My breath slowed. I thought of Caesar Ion, already fled, I prayed, already beyond Octavian's reach. I thought of my twins, who would grow up Roman and never know their mother's truth. I thought of Antony, waiting in whatever afterlife the gods had prepared. And I thought of Egypt, my Egypt, burning bright in memory even as it vanished from the world. Better to die as a queen than live as a trophy. The darkness came like the Nile at flood, vast and inevitable and strangely peaceful. Rome would write the history. They would call me temptress, villain, the destroyer of great men. But I knew the truth that would outlive their lies. I fought an empire with nothing but my will. And for one shining moment, I made them afraid. They found me at dawn, still beautiful in death, dressed like the goddess I had always claimed to be. My handmaidens lay beside me, Iras and Charmian, loyal to the very end. We had all chosen the serpent over the cage. Octavian was furious, they say. Cheated of his triumph. The grand spectacle he had planned, the conquered queen dragged through Roman streets while the mob jeered, reduced to ashes by one small act of defiance. He had won the war, conquered Egypt, claimed the richest kingdom in the world for Rome's treasury. But I had stolen his narrative. That, I think, was my final victory. Not in battle, not in diplomacy, not even in love. But in ensuring that my death would mean something more than his conquest. They buried me beside Antony, at least. That much Octavian permitted, perhaps recognizing that even in death, our story demanded we remain together. Two rulers who had wagered everything on a dream that the world was not yet ready to accept. Egypt became a Roman province. My Alexandria, that magnificent city of learning and light, slowly dimmed under imperial administration. The library burned, eventually. The lighthouse crumbled. The crossroads of the world became just another possession, its uniqueness ground down into the uniform gray of empire. My children's fates were exactly as cruel as I had feared. Caesar Ion was murdered within weeks, hunted down and executed on Octavian's orders. 2 Caesars, Octavian supposedly said, are one too many. My son, brilliant, gentle, 17 years old, killed for the crime of being his father's heir. The twins survived, at least. Raised in Octavia's household, ironically, the woman Antony had abandoned for me. They grew up Roman, married Romans, lived Roman lives. Whether they remembered their mother, whether they kept alive any fragment of what we had tried to build, history does not record. And history, that is the final injustice, isn't it? Octavian became Augustus, the revered founder of imperial Rome. His scribes worked for decades, crafting the official story, how he had saved the Republic from civil war. From foreign corruption, from the seductive Eastern queen who had bewitched great men into betraying their birthright. I became a cautionary tale. A warning to Roman men about the dangers of foreign women. A symbol of Eastern decadence, of irrational passion destroying masculine virtue. They made me into exactly what they needed, the villain in their triumph. But here's what they could never erase, no matter how many lies they told: I ruled Egypt for 22 years. I spoke 9 languages. I commanded fleets, negotiated with empires, and held together a kingdom that should have fallen a dozen times before it did. I was the last pharaoh, the last independent ruler of the ancient world, the final echo of an age when power was more than legions and submission. And when faced with the choice between living as Rome's prisoner or dying as Egypt's queen, I chose sovereignty over survival. That choice ripples forward through time in ways Octavian never anticipated. My story survived his propaganda. The woman they tried to reduce to temptress and villain became immortal, not as Rome's trophy, but as the queen who refused to kneel. Empires are built on the bodies of those they conquer. But they cannot conquer the human spirit's refusal to be diminished. Rome gained the world when I died. They absorbed Egypt's wealth, its grain, its strategic position. They built an empire that would last centuries, all on the foundation of kingdoms like mine, crushed and consolidated. But they lost something too, though they never admitted it. They lost the dream of partnership. Of East and West merged through understanding rather than conquest. Of power shared rather than hoarded. Of love as a bridge between worlds instead of a weakness to exploit. Antony and I, we were flawed, reckless, perhaps doomed from the start. But we dared to imagine something different. And that imagination, that brief flowering of possibility before it was crushed beneath Roman efficiency, matters. Because every empire believes itself eternal. Every conqueror believes his victory is the end of history. But empires fall. Conquerors are forgotten. And the stories of those who dared to defy them, those endure. I am Cleopatra, the last queen of Egypt. I fought Rome with everything I had. I lost my kingdom, my love, my children, my life. But I never lost myself. And in the end, that is the only victory that matters. The serpent's kiss was my coronation, the moment I proved that even in death, a queen remains sovereign. Rome wrote the histories. But I wrote the ending. And my ending says, some things are worth more than survival. Some things are worth dying for.